He was rejected over 1,000 times. That's the story. A story about an old man in a suit, driving from town to town, knocking on doors, begging for strangers to believe in him. That's the version you may have heard, but that's not the whole story. Harland was born September 9th, 1890 in rural Indiana, and his father passed away when he was 5, and his mother, Margaret, had to go to work to provide for the children. At just 5 years old, Harland was tasked with taking care of his 2 younger siblings, and by the age of 7, he was learning to prepare things like bread, vegetables, and eventually different types of meat, and the children would have to forage for whatever they could find while Margaret was away at work. In 1899, Margaret had remarried, but by 1900, she was already widowed again. And that year, Harland began working as a farmhand at a, neighbor's farm, and he was still just 10 years old. Just 2 years after that, in 1902, Margaret remarried again, and Harland didn't really get along with his stepfather, so in 1903, he dropped out, and while he was just in 7th grade, just to go live and work on the farm. So in 1906, with Margaret's approval, he went to work with his uncle as a streetcar conductor, and then he lied about his age to join the army, and that year he also won the Cuban Pacification Medal. When he was honorably discharged in 1907, remember he's still just 17 years old, he went to Sheffield, Alabama to live with his uncle, and his brother Clarence also joined him down there and moved in. His uncle secured him a job with the Southern Railway as a blacksmith's helper, and after 2 months he moved to Jasper, Alabama, where he worked with the Northern Alabama Railroad cleaning the locomotives. Harland worked his way up to becoming a fireman, and it's not a fireman as we know them today. This was a steam engine stoker, keeping the fires going, keeping the engine moving. And after doing that for 3 years, he got really involved with union affairs. While involved with the union, he was defending a co-worker from being fired, and then he eventually lost his job when he became sick, and the railroad said he was just being insubordinate. Later on, Helen met a gal named Josephine, and they had 3 children together. He kept cycling through jobs, having several different jobs with the railroad company, and he even studied law, but he lost most of his jobs when he went full fisticuffs, just started fighting. So Harland bounced around. He lived in Arkansas and lived in Tennessee, and while in Little Rock, Harland got into a fight right in a courtroom with his own client. After that happened, Harland got himself in a little bit of trouble, and he was forced to move back in with his mother and went back to working for the railroad again. In 1916, side note and completely unrelated, but my great-grandfather was born in 1910 and I knew him well, so it really puts things in perspective for me about the time frame here. But he moved to Jeffersonville and began selling life insurance for Prudential Life, and he ended up getting fired for insubordination. Again, after getting fired from Prudential, he moved to Louisville and got a job with Mutual Benefit Life of New Jersey. In 1920, now he's 30 years old, he went and established a ferry boat company which operated, on the Ohio River, and the ferry was an instant success actually. Around 1922, Harland cashed in his shares of this successful ferry boat company for $22,000. That's actually closer to $500,000 today, and he used those to start another company. Again, this company manufactured acetylene torches, but another venture came in called Delco and created much better working lamps. So he failed. Again. So in 1930, after yet another failure, the Shell Oil Company offered Harland his own service station in North Corbin, Kentucky, totally rent-free. They just wanted a percentage of any profits he brought in. While at this gas station, Harland kind of decided to do his own thing too to make this a desirable stop and started selling full meals. He would sell country ham, chicken, steak to all the travelers passing through. North Corbin, at this time, I've not been there and I don't know what it's like today, but it was known as Hell's Half Acre due to all the violence, the gun-related crimes, and all these incidents that happened very frequently in the area. On May 7th in 1931, there was a fella named Matt Stewart. He had this rival gas station just across the way, and he was busy painting over a sign, just get out the rollers and brushes and go to town, get it done. And this wasn't the first time this had been done. And it was advertised in the Shell station on a cement wall, and a car pulled up and there were 3 men inside. The 3 men got out of the car, and one of them, it said that he snarled this comment about, "You yellow dog, I see you smearing that sign again." Now in 2026, that's not that big a deal. You'd probably laugh if somebody said that to you, but them's fighting words back then. Stewart probably didn't even have to turn around to know who was talking at him. He knew right away it was Harland. And words were exchanged, then guns were drawn and shots were fired, and by the end, one person would be left dead. Robert Gibson, a co-worker of Harland's, reportedly drew his gun first, but it failed to fire, so Stewart defended himself and fired right back. And he shot Gibson, and Gibson collapsed, and Harland and Carlisle Shelburne, another Shell employee, fired back at Stewart. Stewart was in fact shot, but survived. Gibson wasn't so lucky and died on his way to the hospital. After that, Stewart ended up getting 18 years in prison for the murder, and this kind of just left Harland to do his thing without competition. Harland was able to do his thing, and what he did was start working on his recipes, and he kind of perfected this technique. And what he did was he used a pressure cooker and found he could reduce the time to prep his meals from like half an hour or more to 10 minutes or less. So this went on, and by the time that World War II ended, Harland tried to decide to sell franchises of his restaurant, but he was rejected over 1,000 times, 1,009 to be exact. He was going door to door, town to town, just trying to get people to listen to him, and he kept just getting told no. People were rejecting him, laughing at him, mocking at him. Most didn't even let him finish. What he did was he'd take his pressure cooker, put it in his car, and literally travel around trying to cook for people to give them a sample. And some wouldn't even let him finish cooking. But Harland refused to give up, and eventually, in 1952, he did land a deal with a restaurateur in Salt Lake City, Utah. So he lands this deal, gets this restaurant going, and he's trying to grow his business. But around that time, the interstate system was being built, and travelers just started completely passing his store, his restaurant. They didn't even know where he was or what it was. Because of that, Harland was forced to close his store, but luckily, he'd set up the franchise. So at age 66, when most folks are retiring and enjoying their last years, however many they may have, Harland started focusing on expansion. In 1964, at the age of 74 years old, Harland sold his company for $2 million, and that's worth about a little over $21 million today. When Harland had passed away at the age of 90, he had created and was the founder of one of the most successful and innovative fast food chains in the entire world. His signature dish was a recipe involving a very specific 11 herbs and spices. You guessed it, Harland Sanders, who was commissioned as a colonel, not because of his time in the army, but long after it, is none other than Colonel Sanders, the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken, or KFC as it's known today. And that is the part that was omitted.